People are trickling in, so thank you so very much for joining. Again, my name is Renee Willis. I'm the interim president and CEO of the National Low Income Housing Coalition. And this is our National House Call, campaign call. And on this call, we focus on advancing anti-racist policies and achieving the large-scale sustained investments and reforms necessary to ensure that renters with the lowest incomes have an affordable place to call home. We launched this campaign because we recognize that more than ever, bold policies are needed to ensure that people with the lowest incomes and the most marginalized people have stable, affordable homes. Today, we will discuss the threats by Elon Musk and the Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, to fire half of HUD staff and how advocates can take action. On our call, we'll have advocates from across the nation, including homeless shelter and service providers, housing advocates, resident organizers, people with lived experience, including low-income people receiving or in need of federal assistance, and people experiencing homelessness. We also will have on the call folks from philanthropy and also the media. This is a reminder that we are nonpartisan. But before we jump into the agenda, I just want to remind people that you can ask your questions by using the Q&A box, which is at the bottom of your Zoom screen. And it's a little bit easier for us as staff to follow if you can type in your question there as opposed to typing it into the chat box. We'll try to get to as many questions as we can, and we will send the PowerPoint presentation and any material that we reference or that the speakers mention, we'll send that out in the coming days. So now let's jump into our agenda. And I want to make sure before, and I take it that Congresswoman Maxine Waters is on. So let me go ahead and introduce the Congresswoman. I am honored to welcome today Congresswoman Maxine Waters from California. She is considered to many to be one of the most powerful women in American politics today. She has gained a reputation as a fearless and outspoken advocate for women, for children, for people of color, the poor, veterans, and seniors. She made history as the first woman in African-American chair to House the Financial Service Committee, where she currently serves as ranking member. NLIHC has a long history of working with Congresswoman Waters, and I am so thrilled to have her here today. We are facing unprecedented threats, as we all know, to affordable housing and to homelessness programs and investments. And I can't think of a better champion in Congress to work with to protect low-income people and communities. So it is my pleasure to welcome today Congresswoman Maxine Waters. And it looks like she may not be here just yet. But we will hear from her. She has votes that are coming up, but we will hear from her momentarily. But until such time, we have some other fabulous speakers on the call as well. So I want to bring to the Zoom platform Rachel Fee, Executive Director of the New York Housing Conference, and Shakti Robbins-Cubas, who is the Senior Policy Analyst at the New York Housing Conference. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you so much for having us. So New York Housing Conference is an affordable housing policy and advocacy organization. We work statewide in New York, and we work with a broad range of stakeholders here. And our mission is affordable housing for all New Yorkers. So we work with developers, nonprofit organizations, community organizations, lenders, all the stakeholders in between. And our policy and advocacy work is at city, state, and federal levels of government. So we're putting most of our energy into federal this year, like many of our partners across the country, because so much is at stake. So my colleague Shakti Robbins-Cubas, who is our senior housing policy analyst, is going to talk about our initial plans in defending housing resources in New York.
Thanks, Rachel, and thanks NLIHC for having us today. We are a NLIHC partner, so we're really excited to share how we've been strategizing so far this year. I'll say our strength is really in our policy analysis, and like Rachel said, we have a very broad coalition that looks to us for information. So kind of being the source of, disseminating information across our partners is really key. We host a bi-weekly affordable housing advocacy call that usually gets about 30 to 50 partners on, where we'll give city, state, and federal policy updates. We open it up to our partners to share information, and it gives us a space to coordinate on advocacy. We also invite guests from national groups like NLIHC to give updates, especially when there's a lot of drama happening on the federal level. It's very important for us to maintain relationships with city and state housing leadership. That's really helpful, especially when we're thinking about impact. For example, if there's like a key member that, we really want to meet with and really want to build a relationship with, it's helpful to be able to go to our agencies and get information on projects in their district and how funding's been used in their district. We do a lot of press and communications, especially right now. We've been connecting folks that have been impacted by funding disruptions to reporters and trying to plant stories, especially locally in New York City. And we also put out a regular newsletter with analysis showing impact on New York. And I think we have maybe 5,000 people on our mailing list. So, this is really, really important for us. And every year, we have a delegation breakfast. We usually try to time this with budget negotiations, where we host our New York delegation members. We'll coordinate with our city and state leadership on New York's housing needs and priorities. And it's really just kind of trying to get all parties involved on the same page and move forward on a shared federal agenda. And we recently just launched our federal advocacy page where we are providing tools and opportunities. Sorry, I'm getting like the notifications from the chat. Where we provide tools and opportunities and resources for our partners and opportunities to support our advocacy. And, what's on there right now is a sign-on letter to the New York delegation. We have about 100 organizations and local elected officials who signed on to tell our members that we need to protect and expand affordable housing resources. And we also have our affordable housing snapshots up right now, which I'll talk about in a second. So our affordable housing snapshots, these are really just a key way for us to communicate what's at risk on a district level. Here we pulled key data on housing need and impact of federal affordable housing resources for the state and also by congressional district. For us, we find that members are really responsive to district level analysis. And so having this does a couple of things. It's obviously educational for staff and members, but it also provides a really important touch point for us to continue maintaining relationships with the delegation. And also, if there are new members, that's a chance for us to share these and introduce ourselves. And this is also how we kind of continue offering to be a resource on affordable housing so that they come to us when they have questions in general. And then it's a segue usually to trying to like schedule meetings. And I'll say when we schedule these meetings, it's like really helpful, we found, to invite one of our partners who's a provider in their district or has developed in their district. And whenever possible, we'll host at an affordable development in their community room. And if we can finesse a tour of the site, that's always really, really helpful for them to see the impact in real time. And of course, it provides a tool for our partners and anyone else who is interested in advocating for affordable housing. So I'll say we are a really small team. We do all our own stunts. So I did want to share this piece that's really important to us, that all of the data we use is publicly accessible. This is primarily census data, it's HUD data, and one of our priorities is also the low-income housing tax credit. So we included some district level analysis from the Action Campaign, which is another coalition that we're a part of. And now I'm just going to ask Rachel to talk a little bit about how we've broadened our messaging around housing this year.
So typically we're talking about the need for housing and who is going to benefit. And we're still talking about that, but like Shakti said, we're expanding our message and really trying to tap into some of the themes that we think are going to be, heard best, especially in the media. So the first one is the climate of uncertainty that we're facing and what kind of impact that's having on affordable housing. So the funding disruptions, like you all know, and the proposed staffing cuts are delaying current affordable projects, especially the impact we're expecting in FHA can cause instability across the entire housing finance market. So when we're hearing about proposed staffing cuts, we're immediately reaching out to lenders on our board, how are you approaching this? What is your risk management team saying? And how are you looking at new deals coming in? Do you have concerns about affordable housing projects in the pipeline that are going to close on financing soon? And if there are HUD approvals involved, what are you hearing? What kind of policy changes are you looking at? So I think just being on top of what's going on in the local market, and it's all happening so quickly. So we are trying to stay on top of it and then really communicating what this climate of uncertainty is doing to lenders of affordable housing, investors, and then it's how it's impacting affordable housing projects that are desperately needed in New York and across the country. And we've certainly heard from all of these stakeholders that they're really concerned that uncertainty is impacting deals, and also pricing on the low-income housing tax credit, any deal with a HUD approval, right, which used to be considered like the staple thing in your deal, is now looked at as more risky. So I'm hoping that we quickly exit this period as things settle in, but it is concerning. Even tariffs, like I think today there was another kind of a dramatic announcement on tariffs on steel, which obviously will impact housing development across the country. So I think just staying on top of what's happening and what that impact is, and being able to communicate that to stakeholders, elected officials, and also the media has been really important to us. And the other...
Rachel, we're going to take a quick pause. We certainly want to hear the remainder of your presentation, but Congresswoman Waters is here, so we want to be able to transition to her now. And we'll get back to you, promise. Wonderful. All right, Congresswoman Waters, thank you so much for being here. I won't go through the introduction for you again. I think most of us know you. And I did an introduction at the top of the call, but thank you so very much for being with us today. We know that you have a lot going on with votes that are happening on the floor, but thank you for joining us today.
Make sure that writing is big and dark. Okay. Is it time for me to speak?
Hello, Congresswoman.
This is Congresswoman Waters,
Yeah,
and I just joined, and I just wanted to say good afternoon to everyone.
well, thank you and good afternoon to you as well. Thank you so much for joining us today. We know that you have a lot happening today. We know that you have votes that are happening now.
Yes,
So we
yes.
really appreciate you taking the time to be with us to talk about the state of affairs and what we can do as advocates to advocate for more affordable housing.
Well, thank you so much. It's truly a pleasure to be on this call with all of you. And I want to thank you, Renee, for the very warm welcome. I'm always delighted to have an opportunity to be with you so that we can plot, plan, and strategize in every way that we can to deal with the issues of housing, homelessness, and what's going on with this administration. Right now, we're in the middle of a 5-alarm fire as Trump, his unelected billionaire co-president, Elon Musk, and Secretary Scott Turner moved quickly to dismantle the United States Department of Housing and Urban Development, chipping away at decades of progress to provide safe, fair, and affordable housing in this country. It is absolutely appalling. The attacks we're seeing on the agency are cruel and unprecedented. In recent weeks, the agency has laid off 780 dedicated staff with reported plans to eliminate more than 4,000 staff in the next 3 months. Shamelessly gutted civil rights protections, including the Equal Access Rule and the Affirmatively Furthering Fair Housing Rule, an outright assault on civil rights. Provided Elon Musk and his so-called DOGE team across access to the confidential personal information of hundreds of thousands of alleged victims of housing discrimination, including victims of domestic violence. And because Trump and Musk are working so swiftly to decimate the federal government's role in housing and consumer protections, they're creating a path for private equity to buy up even more of our available housing and profit at the expense for families. Now, just let me be clear. These actions are not just reckless, they are deliberate and are part of a long-term strategy to dismantle the agency entirely, stripping families of their right to safe, stable, and affordable housing while lining the pockets of Trump's billionaire friends who stand to benefit from the takedown of this agency. In response to this, I led a dozen Democratic colleagues to hand deliver my letter signed by 122 House Democrats, including Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries, to Secretary Turner, demanding answers regarding Mr. Turner and the DOGE ketamine clams unlawful actions. If he thinks he can fire staff, slash critical programs, and drag us backwards, we made it clear that he's going to have to answer to us directly. So we entered the building to deliver the letter, but Secretary Turner's staff wouldn't let us meet with the secretary. We were stopped by someone who said he was the chief of staff and another person who wouldn't identify himself. But we didn't let that stop us. My colleagues and I, along with fair housing advocates and the Department of Housing and Urban Development staff, stood outside of the agency to make our message heard loud and clear. So I want to extend a special word of thanks to you, Renee, along with Jen Butler and Sarah Sadadan for their work putting together such a great rally last week. Together, we made it clear that we're not afraid of DOGE, and we're not we're not getting Elon Musk out of here. We're getting him out of here. We're not afraid of that. We called them out for cutting funding for housing and laying off staff in order to fund Trump tax cuts. And we blasted them for rolling back the clock on civil rights and their brazen efforts to put more homes in the hands of private investors. And so I'm very pleased with the turnout from the event. And in fact, we learned that after our event, Secretary Turner felt like he had to pause the firing of staff and requested a full briefing on operational impact before any further reduction in staff. This just goes to show that we do have the power to demand the change we're fighting for. This is only the beginning. We have the power if we decide to use it, and the fight continues. As you all know, over 771,000 people are experiencing homelessness on any given night in this country, on the streets, in makeshift tents, in cars. They have nowhere to go. The rent is too damn high. Since 2019, median asking rents have increased by over 46% as house prices have reached an all-time high, increasing by over 57%. The Department of Housing and Urban Development is needed now more than ever, providing safe and affordable housing for our nation's veterans, seniors, and people with disabilities. This agency also helps people experiencing homelessness have a path to stable housing and is essential in putting millions of families on the path to the American dream of home ownership. There is no American dream without the Department of Housing and Urban Development. Yet, over the weekend, House Republicans released a reckless appropriations bill that would harm the department's critical housing program. Specifically, this bill would slash the federal housing budget by more than $700 million, putting at least 32,000 households at risk of eviction and homelessness. Considering housing funds account for less than 1% of all federal spending, it is clear that harm is the goal, not efficiency. It is heartless, it is cruel, and I will not stand by while they rip away critical housing support for those who need it most. As a top Democrat on the House Financial Services Committee, I will continue to fight for the Department of Housing and Urban Development and all affordable housing programs. A major part of that fight is pushing for enactment of my housing package, which includes the Housing Crisis Response Act, the Ending Homelessness Act, and the Down Payment Toward Equity Act. Together, these bills represent the single largest and most comprehensive investment in affordable housing in United States history and will finally provide the agency with the resources it needs. So, my message to you all on this call today is to continue pushing for this legislative package. Continue calling your members of Congress to combat these gangster moves we're witnessing at the hands of Trump and Musk, and continue to remind them that we're here in numbers and we aren't going anywhere. We're taking the fight to the streets, to the Department of Housing and Urban Development, and anywhere else we need to be. I look forward to continuing the work with the National Low Income Housing Coalition to push back against this administration and achieve these urgent goals. I want you to know I'm in this fight, and I intend to be deep into it, organizing, working, talking, doing interviews, everything that I can do. By the way, I might even go to Turner's church and visit him and see if the people there understand what he's doing and what Trump has put him in charge of, and that he's aligned with Trump and Musk. I just might do that. I just might go and sit on the front row and see what happens. That's how strongly I feel about all of this. Thank you again for your partnership. The fight is on. Thank you very much.
Thank you so very much, Congresswoman Waters. And I don't know if you're seeing the chat, but it's lighting up right now. People are thanking you all across the country for the work that you've been doing, the work that you will continue to do. And you do have a lot of people in the chat saying, please do go to his church. On the front row.
Okay, thank you. I'll let you know.
Absolutely. And again, thank you so much for being with us and
So
being
welcome.
a strong champion. And you've always been a great partner to the coalition. So thank you for the fight.
And thank you. I'm looking forward to working with you. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Congresswoman. All right. And thank you all for everyone and again, because the chat is lighting up, it's going so quickly. I can't, it's so many comments here, but thank you for those expressions of gratitude. So we're going to move back to the presentation with Rachel Fee. And Rachel, the floor is now yours. And thank you for being so patient.
I mean, I don't have better advocacy advice than Congresswoman Waters, and that she's going to go sit in the front pew of the HUD Secretary's church. I mean, I think we all got to show up for that sermon. I'll just finish here. Voters across the nation want action on housing. And I think it's really important that we keep communicating that to our elected officials, but really reinforce this with the Republicans that are representing communities in our states. So, I mean, Republicans swept this past election because voters were so frustrated by cost inflation. Housing is the biggest inflation driver. And so far, what we're seeing from this administration is a series of policies that are really attacking our housing policies that we have. They're already inadequate. The HUD budget is already not sufficient to help all of the Americans in need of assistance. So I think really emphasizing this connection between what the voters are expecting, how renters are struggling, and pushing Republicans now controlling the White House and Congress for action on housing. And, I think just tearing down the programs we have is not a plan. Deregulating is not a plan. Just focusing on local zoning action without any federal forward-thinking agenda to address our supply crisis and help the lowest income renters is not a plan. So at New York Housing Conference, we would be happy to share any of our materials. I previously put a link in the chat. It's really easy to replicate the materials that we've done in terms of district housing snapshots for each congressional district, to do it in your own states. And please reach out to us if we can be of assistance. Thank you.
And thank you so very much, Rachel, for the presentation. And let's go now to Kelly Sue Waller, who is a community organizer with the Tennessee Renters United. The floor is yours, Kelly.
Hey, all. Thanks, everybody. Really excited to hear from folks and, of course, from Ms. Waters. I am Kelly Sue Waller, and I'm with Tennessee Renters United. I am located, of course, in Tennessee, but we do organize across the state. Our projects, our on-the-ground projects, are in rural towns and counties in Tennessee, in Shelbyville, Tullahoma, and Columbia. And we are organizing our base. We have been building tenant unions and tenant councils in these cities, and we have done this both with inside and outside strategies. We have won city council seats, we have built tenant unions, we have built city unions that won a renters council that is part of our, here in Shelbyville where I live, that is part of our city council. And progress is slow, but we are building to demand both like affordable housing, dignity in housing, and to address some of the slumlord conditions that folks live in. We do organize both in HUD housing and in private housing, but a lot of our projects are tenants are organizing themselves to fight back against slum-like conditions, rising rent costs, and just the disrespect that some of us experience. I grew up in project-based housing and raised my son in Section 8 housing. And my mother lives in low-income housing outside of Savannah, so this issue hits really close to home for me and is very important to me because safe, affordable housing is how we build safe communities. And by safe, I mean people have their needs met. So Tennessee Renters United grew out of organizing that we started on the very hyper local level back in 2018. And then as we started to grow into other areas in the state, what we realized is while we were fighting on the local level, one of the things that was holding us back to getting some of the things that we needed, which is repairs and lower housing, is state preemption. In our state, there are so many laws against either nothing exists to protect us or things that actually exist that prevent us from getting some of the things we need. So we decided that we needed to start organizing further around the state. And so we started doing distributive organizing, bringing our message out to people all across the state, supporting them to do vigils about their housing conditions, organize, do trainings around how to organize folks and bring folks in. And we're really excited about being, here's some of our folks, not another not another nickel, not another dime. Here's some of our folks in Columbia, Tennessee. I saw there was someone on the call from Columbia organizing in Columbia around the issues that they are facing. My son also lives in Columbia and was renting a 1-bedroom apartment for $1,200 and could not find a better place. And then a leak got in this, anyway, y'all know what it's like out there. But as we started to realize that state preemption and other issues were stopping us, we got involved with all the other housing organizations across the state, and we're now partnering and working with NHLIC to develop our statewide coalition, which is Tennessee Housing for All. And we brought together different groups from across the state, both in urban areas and rural areas, because we think there's a divide, but we're all facing the same issue. And the issue we're facing is homelessness, we need more affordable housing, and the tenants' rights issues. Open Table, Nashville, Memphis Tenants United, SOCM, which is Statewide Organizing for Community Empowerment, and the Greater Memphis Housing Justice Project have founded a coalition across the state, which is Tennessee Housing for All. And we'll hopefully send out some more information about that. And most recently, here we are. Most recently, we went to our Day on the Hill, and we took tenants from rural areas, folks who had never gone to legislators' offices, that went in there, spoke their truth, told them what was going on. They live in HUD housing, they live in Section 8 and also private, but a lot of it is HUD and Section 8 housing, to talk about the problems they're experiencing and the lack of protections that they have as tenants. And we've done 3 now, and this year we had 130 folks with us. It was 90 people last year. We had 50 meetings, and we really are starting to power map our legislation, find out who's with us, who can we bring with us, and who are we going to have to, as Waters said, like, show up in their places and let them know, like, that we need them on board, invite them in the ways that we have to. So probably talking fast. So Housing Day on the Hill, I cover that. So that's a little bit about who we are. Recently, with the HUD cuts coming, we switched a little bit from our hyperlocal work, following the lead of NHLIC and other organizations across the country that are fighting back against these incredibly harmful cuts. We moved on to, we made some flyers and some social media stuff, but what we did is we went out and started knocking in the complexes, and as well as inviting people who are already involved in our tenant work, talking about this issue and doing community meetings about this issue. So we went to where people live, and neighbors, people who already live there or members of our groups, knocked their neighbors' doors to talk about these cuts and how harmful they are. And while we find these cuts harmful for what they are in the first place, we also find them harmful because one of our strategies is when we start to form tenant unions, landlords retaliate. And we really need HUD to be strong because we need HUD to be strong allies to us. Allies to us and form relationships with the tenants so that when they do form these unions and they do demand what they deserve, there are HUD as an ally to us and showing up with us and defending our right to organize and to ask for what we need. and make that happen. So we were talking a lot about why that matters so much about not cutting HUD, because we live in the South where HUD is already like, our infrastructure is already underfunded, already been abandoned. And the last thing we need are any more cuts to anything that is helping keep our communities housed. So we use this flyer, and then we also had we knocked doors, we put it out on social media, we had her doing our base, and then across the state, we ran a series of ads and social media ads to invite people into our call, which was the hands off HUD, say no to the cuts, very much naming that DOGE is who is helping make these cuts, and that they have no one gave them permission to do that, and it's ridiculous. And what we heard from people is that they are worried about these cuts. They're worried about what's going to happen to their families. They're worried about the lack of infrastructure. They're worried about not having allies to their campaigns. And they're worried about just like with around the budget, the renewals that need to happen. Like people already wait forever to get into housing. So we heard a lot about that. And then we invited people into our call, and people showed up on Zoom. And what we did on our Zoom call is we listened to like the issues and fears around these cuts and built some relationship. And then we connected like the HUD cuts to like our local issues and how all of that is like, we all did that together. And then we committed to action. We started with some like low key actions, which are the NHLIC like action, like email Congress, if you're part of an organization, to sign on. Then we sent out a post that we asked people to post to their social media that is spreading across Tennessee. And then some of our bigger asks, which we will also support people in doing, are to do vigils, set up meetings with their Congress member, go to public events, or maybe have a public forum. And I know there are already public forums brewing across the state. People joined who were curious of what was happening and were going to go out in their HUD or Section 8 property or project-based housing and tell their neighbors what was going on. So the other thing we did on this call is we tried to connect. So one of the things I was trying to say is we try to connect our local fights and our local bases to our state work, and then also to strategic federal campaigns like this one, because we know that we need this funding to keep our communities safe. I'm so angry about all of this. We do know that it's a plan. We do know that it starts with these firings and it leads to people like my family, my son, my mom, and my community being without housing. And so we're trying to build leadership on the local level so that we can bring more folks who are experiencing these issues, who should be the people making these decisions, should be the people forming these campaigns, so that our campaigns are being built by the people living in these properties, and that the steps we take to try to solve them are being led by people who are most affected by them. And what else? I think that's it. That was probably fast. I really appreciate y'all. And any questions that you have?
And we so appreciate you too, Kelly. And in the chat, you know, there are so many people who are agreeing with you. Cynthia L is saying you have every right to be angry. And that is so very true. But thank you for sharing some of the best practices and things that you're doing in your community to keep housing affordable and available for people who really need them and in your community. So thank you for that work. And I don't see any questions coming in now for Kelly. And thank you, Annette Ruiz, who says, thank you, Kelly, you are an inspiration. And you truly are. As well as you, Rachel and Shakti, because as we just heard from 3 advocates who are doing just incredible hard work in their communities right now, given all that is happening with these proposed cuts from DOGE and the administration. And that leads us right into actually Kim Johnson, who is our policy manager here at the coalition, who will give an policy update. So Kim, welcome.
Thank you so much, Renee, and hi, everyone. Always a pleasure to be here with you. I'm Kim Johnson, the Policy Manager here at NLIHC, and I'm here to provide an update about what is going on Capitol Hill. We had a few comments and questions coming in, asking questions about, what is this continuing resolution that's happening right now that our dear Congresswoman Maxine Waters had to run off to vote on. And so let's talk a little bit about what that is and what we kind of anticipate coming along for next steps. So first, the state of play. Congress is still almost 5 months behind schedule in passing an FY25 budget for HUD and other federal programs. The federal government is currently operating on a continuing resolution until this Friday, March 14th. Some just very quick level setting to make sure that we're all kind of talking about the same things. A continuing resolution is a typically temporary stopgap funding measure that simply extends funding that was appropriated in the previous year for a specified period of time. Usually a continuing resolution will last a few weeks, a couple months in order to buy members of Congress more time to reach those negotiations and a final deal on funding. In this case, they're looking essentially to forgo the rest of reaching a final FY25 deal by passing this year-long continuing resolution. The House Republicans released that continuing resolution proposal on Saturday, and it would last through September. So it would take us all through fiscal year 2025 and right up to fiscal year 2026. And again, because of the nature of a CR, that would flat fund federal programs, including HUD, and it also provides some additional funding for key programs. Next slide, please. So some details of what this continuing resolution includes. The top line is that the bill would cut about $13 billion in domestic spending from the previous fiscal year. And that's, again, because CRs provide that flat funding, while also proposing funding adjustments for some federal programs. So that would include an additional $6 billion in defense spending and some funding for key HUD programs. It would provide $32.14 billion to renew HUD's contracts under the tenant-based rental assistance program, which is an increase from the previous fiscal year, and interestingly, also an increase from the levels proposed in both the House and Senate FY25 draft bills. But it is still, like Maxine Waters said when she was on, it is still going to come up short for full funding for voucher renewals. It's going to be about $700 million short, which would result in an estimated loss of about 32,000 vouchers from the program. And one thing that I do want to make clear, because I don't want folks who rely on those vouchers to panic, that would look like kind of likely the slow trickle of losing vouchers upon turnover. So basically, when a household no longer needs a voucher, rather than that voucher being reissued to a new household in need, it would disappear. So it acts as a cut over time by losing all of those vouchers that would no longer have funding attached to them to pay for renewals. And when we're already severely underfunding vouchers, so that only 1 in 4 households who are qualified to receive a voucher actually get one, that's going to have a big impact on housing affordability and stability for a lot of households. Next slide, please. Thank you. So we're also looking for a $16.49 billion for the project-based rental assistance program, which is a $480 million increase from FY24. We have spoken with some of our friends in the PBR who specialize in PBRA, and it is not as much funding as they were hoping would be included, but they are somewhat optimistic that that could cover the cost of renewals for the program, depending on how how PHAs can kind of shift that funding around. There would be additional money for the Section 202 program, which provides affordable, accessible housing and supportive services for older adults. And it would provide additional funding as well for the Section 811 program, which provides affordable, accessible housing and supportive services for people with disabilities to ensure that they can live in community instead of institutionalized settings. Next slide, please. Ooh, this one gets a little small, so I'll try to summarize so that folks aren't squinting. Also, for the record, we are going to be sending these out as well in our follow-up emails, and they are always available on our website after our calls air. So some additional details for homeless assistance grants. The continuing resolution actually gives the HUD secretary the authority to quote unquote repurpose funds made available for a different program, the COC Builds program. So we had to check in with our friends at the National Alliance to End Homelessness because the way in which this language is written is very sticky. So essentially, there was a notice of funding opportunity for the COC Builds program that was released last year, but that funding was never awarded. So instead of providing additional funding explicitly for the homeless assistance grants program, what this language does is says that essentially the HUD secretary can go into the funding for the COC Builds program in order to repad the COC funding that's needed. That maneuver is still going to come up short for serving all of the communities that HUD's homeless assistance programs currently provide housing and services for by about $168 million. And so that could potentially impact services for about 20,000 people who are experiencing homelessness across this country. There would be, thanks, Brooke. The little box popped up right as I was looking at the number. There would be a pretty significant cut to HUD's Community Development Fund. That would be mostly through the loss of earmarks, which are congressionally requested spending for specific programs. Some of those programs would serve people experiencing homelessness, survivors of domestic violence. I know that there is a program specifically that Alaska Senator Lisa Murkowski requested that would help families experiencing homelessness that would not see that funding go through. And this bill did not provide any additional funding for disaster recovery efforts, nor would it address a looming deadline for the federal debt ceiling that will rear its ugly head again in the late spring and early summer of this year if it's not addressed. Next slide, please. So what happens next? The House is voting on the continuing resolution today. There was a very, very, very narrow margin that House Speaker Mike Johnson has to work with. He can only afford to lose one vote from his party if there is no support for this continuing resolution for Democrats. And if it does pass, it's still going to face a steep hurdle in the Senate, where it will need at least 7 Democrats to peel away in order to pass, even if every Republican votes in favor of the measure. Meanwhile, Democratic appropriations leaders Rosa DeLauro and Patty Murray have released the text of another short-term continuing resolution that would extend federal funding until April 11th. They are looking to just buy additional time in order to reach that final FY25 spending bill and get final bill agreements out the door and finalized. Next slide, please. So we are still calling on Congress to finalize an FY25 spending bill with full funding for voucher renewals, as well as funding for some of our other priorities. 32,000 vouchers is still an unacceptable number of vouchers to lose when people are struggling to make ends meet and a record number of people are experiencing homelessness. And so we are going to continue to fight for that full funding that our communities and our neighbors deserve. We have a take action page so that folks can contact their members of Congress quickly and easily. If folks have a little bit more time, they can contact their elected officials and tell them about the impact that HUD programs have on you, your families, and your communities, and the impact that the loss of funding for these vital programs would have. For example, if your community loses $1 million in funding for homelessness services, how will they make up that loss? What programs and services are not going to be able to go forward because of that cut? Making the impact of these decisions real to elected officials is so important in effective advocacy. And we have a whole toolkit about opposing dramatic cuts to federal investments in affordable housing that has talking points and tips on how to schedule a meeting with elected officials and more. And I think that is all for my slides. But I'm sure that there have been some questions that have come in while I was jibber jabbering. So I will turn it back on over to Renee to help me facilitate answering some of those.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that very critical update, Kim. And it looks like we do have a few questions, one from Zella. Kim, how are we addressing the targeting of DOGE and the administration as they target sensitive information and using that information to bully advocates and organizations, et cetera?
Yeah, thank you for the question, Zella. And also, hi, I hope that you're doing well. For folks who don't know, Zella is an incredible advocate and one of NLIHC's resident board members. And she just does really incredible work out in Los Angeles and, everywhere she goes. So hi, Zella, wonderful to see you and so glad that you're on. Yeah, the concerns around DOGE accessing private information, I won't lie to you, it is scary. I wish that I had a more concrete solution or action that's being taken, because that is sensitive information that needs to be guarded and that has federal protections around it that are being ignored. And that is scary and that is not okay. There are systems like, the legal system that's popping up to say, wait, hey, you can't do this. But rules are only as good as they are enforced. And so if courts are saying, hey, wait, you can't do this, and they say, oh, well, we're going to do it anyway, then we need to figure out what is the next step in order to make sure our people are safe. Yeah, I wish I had more of a kind of direct answer for you, Zella, unfortunately, or more of a something more that I know what to do next. But unfortunately, I don't quite yet. But I trust that we are going to keep on fighting and figure it out.
Thank you, Kim. Let's see, the next question is from Monica. Monica wants to know, what's the difference between Section 8 and tenant-based rental assistance?
Yeah, so those are actually synonymous in many ways. So Section 8 can be tenant-based or project-based. Section 8 tenant-based rental assistance is essentially a rental assistance voucher that follows you around. So you can take that voucher and use it in the private market where you want to. Project-based is when the funding is tied to a specific unit or a specific housing development. And so rather than, that funding following you, you kind of go to where that affordable project is, if that makes sense.
Excellent. Thank you, Kim. And we have another question from Avni, and I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your first name. But the question is, because earmarks are not included in the CR, are the FY25 earmarks that were approved prioritized for FY26?
That is a great question. I am honestly not totally sure how that earmark process is going to shake out if this continuing resolution does go forward. Yeah, that's a great question. I imagine they might redo the whole process and have folks reapply for that congressionally designated funding. But I'm actually really not sure how they would handle that. We don't often have to navigate situations under a continuing resolution, so a lot of this will be kind of novel. Yeah, so we will certainly keep an ear out for how that is going to turn out and be sure to let our advocates know.
Thank you for that, Kim. The next question comes from CJ. And CJ wants to know, so are you saying all COC build projects have been halted and are going into rental assistance? And then the second part of that, it just moved on me. Could you be more specific?
Yeah, of course, CJ. Thanks for the question. So one, I do want to be clear that this is the proposal and it has not gone forward yet. So this is what is being proposed to happen and not the reality of what is happening yet, or of what might actually go forward. My understanding, CJ, and I would of course have to kind of ask around and talk to our partners at the Alliance, is that essentially, yes, those COC builds projects would be paused so that the funding would go not necessarily towards rental assistance, but for other homeless assistance grants, services and other things that COCs would need that funding for. Again, that's not totally, this is not like certain, this is just what the proposed CR would do. And we're still fighting for additional funding for homeless assistance grants so that the COC builds projects would be able to move forward.
Awesome. Thank you, Kim. And it looks like the last question that I have in the queue comes from Erhard. Hello there. Erhard is a former NLIHC board member as well. And the question is there language rescinding existing funded FY 2024 earmarks that funds vital projects, many of which are already underway? Second part of the question. There was vague language to that effect in the administration's CR anomalies request.
Ooh, that is a good question, Erhard. I did not see anything rescinding the FY 24 earmark funding. Connect with me offline though, because I would love to just double check to make sure I'm not missing anything. But no, I did not see anything in the final CR anomalies or CR that came out, but I will double check just to make sure.
Thank you for that, Kim. And Jim Dodd in the chat says, Kim, great information as always. So thank you for that, Jim. And then we have a comment from Sheila, who says, I don't understand how we as individual homeless services providers will operate with cuts in COCs.
Yeah, thank you so much for the comment, Sheila. And I think that, you know, that's a very, very real fear. How do these programs keep operating? Can they? And that's the real issue, right? Is that a lot of them can't. And that's really at the crux of what's going on, is trying to gut HUD, you know, in every way possible, from cutting staffing to cutting funding, so that these services are not working and not serving the people who need them. That's why, you know, we continue to show up every day and fight, because we know that these programs are too important and the people who are being served need them. The people being served are too important for us to, you know, sit down and let this happen. So I really appreciate the question and just the reality of, like, yeah, it is scary. And we're going to keep being here to fight it.
Absolutely. And we certainly need you to continue to be here to fight it as well. And it looks like the last question that just came in, let's see, what are the benefits residing in subsidized housing?
Yeah, I would say there are many benefits. Subsidized housing is affordable housing, you know, so we want to make sure that people are able to afford where they're living, that they can keep a roof over their head while also putting food on the table and making sure their kids can get to school and they can get to work and they have medical care and all those important things. We believe not just in subsidized housing, but safe, quality, affordable, accessible subsidized housing. And so we want to make sure that we are fighting not just for affordability, but also to make sure that everybody has good, standard, accessible homes without rent burdens, because that's what we deserve.
Absolutely. All right, and that is it for the questions. And thank you so very much, Kim, for those important updates. And thank you all for being a part of this conversation and joining these calls as you regularly do. We will have these slides and the information shared out to you very, very soon. But again, thank you for joining today's House Call. And thank you to our special guests. Thank you to Rachel Fee, Shakti Robbins-Cubas of the New York Housing Conference. Thank you, Kelly Sue Waller of the Tennessee Renters United. And thank you, Congresswoman Waters, for being here as well. And again, thank you for joining today's House Call, and we'll see you next time.